Welcome to the Deliberately Transformed Woman podcast. I'm your host, Makaela Moore. I'm a mother, wife, author, and former HR professional turned intuitive leadership coach who loves brain science, Boston Terriers, books, and acreage life. I help women in business to find the real cause of their procrastination and to overcome imposter syndrome by shifting their identity so they can finally be focused, productive, and confident in life and business. Unlike other coaches who focus on traditional and unsustainable goal setting and planning strategies that fail to address the root cause of procrastination, I use my signature framework, which uses brain science, subconscious reprogramming, and results-based planning tools to help women in business to transform their life from the inside out. If you're the type of person who wants to let go of the things holding you back by busting through fear and procrastination, finding your confidence, and stepping into a life that is fulfilling, courageous, and intentional, then this podcast is for you. I'm so happy you're here. When I was younger, in my late teens and early 20s, I would spend whatever spare money I had on things like the latest trendy clothes or shoes, costume jewelry, cosmetics, hair clips, etc. Whatever I thought would make me look and feel good. But I just never felt like I was good enough. I'd go to parties with my first husband and his friends and their girlfriends, and I would make a huge effort to look just right. And then I'd turn up and I would still feel like the ugly duckling in the corner. The other girls would turn up looking like they'd just thrown their outfit together, but always looking so effortlessly chic. They would be the life of the party and everyone would talk to them. They were all so popular. They had perfect bodies, perfect hair, perfect complexions, much nicer clothes and shoes than me. And despite my every effort to try and fit in and to be like them, I just never felt like I could match up to them in all their glory. Then we all got married and bought houses, and naturally they all had nicer houses, nicer furniture, and I felt like mine wasn't good enough. I could just never measure up to them no matter how hard I tried. And the more I tried, the more frustrated I became with just not being as good as them. Even their weddings were better than mine in one way or another. They all had amazing marriages and just seemed to have such perfect lives with the cards always falling their way. I was desperately unhappy and I just knew that I needed more from life. I needed more than an ordinary marriage in an ordinary house with an ordinary job and my ordinary clothes and hair clips. And so I left that marriage. And then I went on to repeat that same cycle several times, always feeling like I just wasn't good enough and that everyone around me was better than me. And a few years after my divorce, I had a 2-year relationship with a guy who I thought I was going to marry and have babies with. He ended that and left me for another woman. I was devastated. And amongst all of the random memories that I have of that time, which was almost 20 years ago now, one thing that sticks out is I remember thinking that I was never going to meet anyone as good as him ever again, nor would I have children with anyone else. I honestly thought at the time he was my only option in life for marriage and babies. Firstly, the best thing he could ever have done for me was to leave, because what I didn't realize back then was that I deserved way better than him. Way better. Yet at the time, I didn't see it. And then over the following 10 years, I was mostly single and I was focusing on my uni degree, building my career in human resources and traveling overseas on my own. I also lived on my own in a tiny little 1-bedroom inner city apartment for a few years, and I bloody loved it. That 10 years was really the beginning of my journey into personal development and also the start of the road home to me. I had spent so much of my teens and my 20-something years trying to be like everyone else without a clue who I actually was, because I just desperately wanted to be liked, to be loved, to be part of the cool group, to be accepted, to just be good enough. If only I could emulate the cool kids, the popular kids, then I too could be cool and popular and maybe have some friends. If I had dressed in a certain way, then people would like me. If I looked a certain way, had skinnier legs and nicer feet and pretty toes, then people would like me. If my hair was more like the beautiful actress in the movie, then people would like me. If I was smarter or funnier, people would like me. Does any of this resonate or sound familiar to you? None of what I have just mentioned had anything to do with anyone else except me. In a nutshell, all of that came down to self-worth. I did not feel worthy enough, and therefore I didn't feel good enough amongst any of those people. It had absolutely nothing to do with any of them. They were just living their own life with their own insecurities, which were probably similar to mine. This was all about me not feeling worthy, not feeling good enough, not feeling liked or loved, and not being seen or not feeling like I was seen. I didn't even think I was worthy of anyone better than the guy who dumped me because I put on a few kilos after a surgery and then he left me for his hot secretary. At the time, I honestly thought I would never be able to get anyone that good again. I seriously want to go back and slap that girl. But at least those following years ironed that all out of me. So by the time I met my current husband, who, God, he really is a gem. And honestly, no one could find a man better than him. By the time I met him, I had certainly done some living. I was 38 when I met him 10 years ago. I had done a lot of work by then to realize and build my self-confidence. And I was in a really good place, having shed quite a few layers of the bullshit stories and beliefs of not being good enough. Within a year of meeting, we were about to get married. I was 5 months pregnant with our daughter, and a few days before our wedding, my mother told me over the phone that my husband-to-be was too good for me, that he was not my type, and that she hoped that he would realize what he was getting himself into before it was too late for him. Thanks so much for that vote of confidence, Mum. No wonder I had bloody self-worth issues when my own mother was telling me that the man I was about to marry was too good for me. Yet again, I wasn't bloody good enough. And people wonder why I haven't actually laid eyes on her since that day. That day was both another slap in the face for me, and it was the moment that I stood up to the toxicity and I uninvited it to my wedding and to my life. That day was almost 9 years ago, and while I don't think of it all that often anymore, it really did play over in my mind for quite some time. They say that some people are batting above their league or above their average and things like that. Was that me? Was I batting above my average? I really did question it. I had gone from being attracted to all of the wrong guys over the years because my own self-worth was so low that I'd been attracted to guys who weren't good for me, but they were certainly good for my ego. And all of that led to some further internal work on myself and coming to the realization that my husband wasn't too good for me, but nor was I too good for him. That we were just a perfect match in every way, and we have everything we could ever want or deserve in life and in each other. He's my soulmate, and I am so very thankful for being dumped all those years ago and for realizing that I was worth more than settling for the wrong person for me. So that was great. That was another layer of the onion peeled, and I could get on with life and business. Then, while I was on maternity leave, I was made redundant from my senior human resources position. another big blow to the ego to just reinforce that old self-worth gem once again. It just seemed like every time I'd start getting confident with something, there'd be someone or something to pull me back down to earth, and I'd be questioning everything about myself all over again. I was so self-conscious about how to act, how I looked, what I should or shouldn't say to people, including my friends, that, looking back now, it's a wonder that I've been able to form or maintain any sort of genuine friendships when I feel like I had been so self-conscious that I wasn't being my true, authentic self in the process. And being self-conscious became an obsession for me. I couldn't even leave the house without checking that I looked somewhat presentable in the mirror, that my clothes were disguising the fat bits as best they could, or, all those sorts of things. My self-consciousness has kept me hidden. I have even declined invitations to events because I didn't think I had anything good enough to wear that would make me look good enough for the occasion or like I belonged there. There have been so many ideas that I've had for life or business that I haven't executed over the years because of lack of confidence and worrying about judgment, perfectionism, criticism, not being good enough, and failure, etc. I have this natural talent for coming up with random ideas, and I am forever helping friends to brainstorm ideas for themselves. And yet when it comes to me taking action on any ideas of my own, I always find excuses, reasons, distractions, etc. And then I just move on to the next thing or the next bright, shiny light, never really achieving anything. It would have looked like a major case of procrastination, which ultimately it was. This is where I'm focusing my coaching now, is on all of the flow-on effects of low self-worth, which includes lack of confidence, perfectionism, procrastination, fear of judgment, criticism, a fear of failure, fear in general, and not being good enough, and not being able to get out of your own way and achieve the things that you actually want to achieve. All these things that I've just listed all tie into one another and can be very much intricately interwoven, often so neatly woven that they're actually hard for the average eye to spot. And when people have been suffering and laboring under these false beliefs their whole life, they are like truth and fact to them, and their brain can be very good at hiding them and disguising them as other things, and they don't even realize it. So when I was showing up and actually feeling intimidated or inferior to the popular girls, how was I actually showing up? For starters, I used to remember thinking that if I didn't show up, no one would even notice. I would always be super surprised if anyone showed any interest in me or concern in me. My self-esteem was that low. But I look back at how I was showing up, and it's no wonder that I wasn't part of the popular crowd. Firstly, I told myself I didn't belong, and therefore I didn't act as if I did belong. So if someone is showing you they don't belong somewhere, they are often not openly welcomed in. Ultimately, I was creating the environment around me. I could have just walked in like I belonged, which I would have if only I'd recognized it, and I could have just been a part of the group. I could have felt comfortable and confident and just been myself, and I would have created a different environment. But that nasty inner critic of mine that had been there since childhood told me otherwise. I was honestly convinced that I did not belong anywhere, or that I was not good enough for anything. Having just co-authored the Letter to My 10-Year-Old Self anthology, which is due for publishing this December, it gave me the chance to revisit my childhood in a whole new way. It was an opportunity to right a wrong and to rewrite history. Now, if it was a movie, I would have been able to actually send that letter back to my 10-year-old self, telling her that she was completely worthy, loved, and deserving of everything that life has to offer. But this is real life. What I could do instead, though, is venture into some of the inner child work that I've been exploring with some of my one-on-one clients, where we go back under self-hypnosis and we give our inner child the love and the messages that they needed What this does is it begins to reprogram your subconscious so that these stories and beliefs that have been held in your subconscious since childhood can begin to lose their control over you. And these stories and beliefs are so well entrenched that we don't even recognize them as stories because they're just an accepted law in our head, like believing the sky is blue or the grass is green. Is it really? Or do you just think that because that's what we've been taught? Or what about the planets? We just accept that they are all out there because that is what we've been taught and we just accepted it. And like so many things we've been told in our life, we've never really questioned them. If a child is told, even in really subtle ways, that they are not worth being seen or heard, then they will hide wherever possible throughout their life. Something I did realize recently was that my own dad has always said that he doesn't suffer fools lightly, and he has always been very judgmental of anyone that he perceives as being silly or stupid. And it was in that discovery that I realized that as a kid, I was also told that I was being silly or stupid. Now, as an adult, saying that to someone, you don't expect that they're going to go and store that away in their subconscious and believe that they are silly or stupid and let it dictate their entire life. But when you say those sorts of things to a kid, they do. Those messages, even if they're misinterpreted by the child, are stored away in their subconscious as a truth. That child then grows up believing that as a truth, as true as the sky is blue. And that was one of the truths that I grew up believing, that I was silly and stupid. And because of that, I spent all of my school years believing I wasn't smart enough, that I wasn't going to do any good. And so therefore I didn't bother trying. But in hindsight, I look back and I realize that for someone who didn't try at all and never did homework and only shut up to school 3 or 4 days out of 5 a week, then I actually didn't do too bad. Admittedly, I didn't do very well as I just scraped through with a pass on everything except maths, which that's another story that I've always said over the years that I'm not good at. But I walked away with almost straight passes. Now, if I had have applied myself to any extent in school, I would have come out with some pretty good scores. Not that it really matters in the grand scheme of things, but the only reason I didn't do really well in school is because I believed I was not smart, because that is basically what I had always been told. To be able to actually go back and tell our 10-year-old self this stuff, how good would that be? Fortunately for me, through the personal development work that I've done, I have got the tools to undo and rewire all of that old messaging. But geez, life would have been easier if the initial programming had been better. However, having said all of that, everything happens just as it should. And had I not gone through everything that I have been through in my life, I wouldn't be here telling this story in this moment. It is because of all the adversity that I can now help my own coaching clients to identify their stories, to delve into their subconscious and find the root cause of patterns and behaviors now that they have been desperately trying to change, but they feel like they just keep self-sabotaging. In particular, setting goals and then struggling with procrastination and being held back by perfectionism, imposter syndrome, and fear of judgment. All of these stem from programming in the subconscious, and no amount of willpower is going to help make those changes. No goal-setting system or magical organizational planner on this earth can help you stop the cycle of procrastination until you do the inner work to get to that root cause. And then, and only then, can you start making headway and move forward with goals and plans with ease, loosening the shackles and leaving that struggle behind. And that is what I do. I help my clients to get to that root cause and to reprogram their subconscious so they can free themselves from the cycles of procrastination and perfectionism, imposter syndrome and self-sabotaging behaviors, and actually achieve their goals with freedom and ease. If you're the type of person who struggles with procrastination, never feeling like you've achieved much by the end of the day or the week, despite feeling like you've been busy, then you may or may not have already realized in listening to this episode that I can help you. And you probably already know that coaching will help you overcome these patterns, and it is the key to your continual self-improvement. And it's easy to see that if you continue what you're doing, you're just going to keep getting the same self-sabotaging results, is it not? Which is why you should do yourself a favor and your career a favor and book a coaching session so that I can help you get to the root cause of that and other patterns and behaviors that are holding you back in life and business. Now, my email address is in the show notes, so I want you to send me an email and tell me what you think causes your procrastination, because I'd love to hear the stories, but I'd also love to be able to help you to get to the bottom of it and change those patterns forever. As I mentioned earlier, I have just co-authored a book. Letter to My 10-Year-Old Self takes all of my wisdom and knowledge that I have now and sends it back to my 10-year-old self. If only. God, how good would that have been if we actually could? It has been such an amazing experience to write my chapter, and it's been really super healing for me. And it's even inspired me to create a meditation for my coaching clients dedicated to going back and talking to our 10-year-old self. So if you want to be amongst the first to have a VIP sneak peek at the book with a pre-sale link, then head to the link in the show notes and you will be added to the VIP list. Trust me, it's an amazing book. I'm only one of the authors and there are some amazing stories in there. Truly amazing. Thank you for listening this week. I would love it if you jump on over to my Facebook group, Deliberately Transformed with Makaela Moore, to chat with me more about this topic. I love hearing people's stories and just seeing how I can help you. Just be sure to tag me in the group and I'll just come in for a chat. All right, take care and I'll catch you next week. Cheers. Thanks for listening. The fact that you're here means that you find value in this podcast, and if you're finding value here, then your friends and family will too. So do them and me a favour if you will, and share this podcast with them, please. If you'd like more inspiration and to connect with other Deliberate Transformers, head on over to my Facebook group, Deliberately Transformed with Makaela Moore. You'll find the link in the show notes. You'll also want to hit subscribe to make sure that you never miss an episode. Until next time, take care.